friends. I hope you're doing well. We're continuing this month on Jesus Revealed. And today we're going to look at how Jesus is revealed on the mountaintop. Matthew 5, verses 1 to 2 says this, that as Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountaintop where he sat down, and his disciples came to him. And that is when he opened his mouth and started to teach. And we know that the next 3 chapters talked about the entire Sermon on the Mount, where he explained how he came and how he expected mankind to behave. And this is powerful in the sense that many crowds began to listen to his teaching from the mountaintop. He actually wanted to see who would follow him up to the mountain to hear his words. You know, it's not always easy to climb a mountain, and he led them upwards because Jesus is always drawing us upwards in whatever he does, in whatever he speaks to us. He wants to take us higher to the mountaintop where there's more revelation, there's more understanding, there's more impartation that takes place. Let me recommend that to avoid stagnating in your Christian life, always follow Jesus to the mountaintop. His speech ends 3 chapters later, and in Matthew 7:28, we see that when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished. They were truly impacted by a whole new level of revelation. And then in Matthew 8, 1 to 2, we see that he came down from that mountain and the crowds continued to follow him. But the next thing that happens is very interesting, because at that point, a leper comes to Jesus and kneels down before him. And then he says, "Lord, if it is your will, you can make me clean." You see what's happening here? Among all the crowds that followed Jesus after such marvelous teaching, only one man knelt down to worship. Only one man knelt down in reverence before Jesus. You know, my friends, there is a big difference between crowds and true worshipers. There's a big difference between spectators and authentic worshipers in spirit and in truth. And a lot of times we can have this mountaintop experience and be amazed, and yet it doesn't lead us to more intimate, more heartfelt, more sincere worship. But this man who was sick showed us the example of what happens when you come to Jesus and you truly sense who he is. The automatic response is worship, kneeling down, before you ask him to do something for you. Further on in Matthew 15, verses 29 to 31, it says that Jesus was in the area called Galilee. And after he walked a while by the sea, he went up to the mountaintop. Again, there's where he sat down. And again, great crowds followed him. But this time they brought all the sick people with them, the blind and the lame and the deaf and the crippled. And so what happened next was that Jesus began to release miracles. You see, my friends, it's on the mountaintop that the supernatural power of God is released. Miracles take place on the mountains. Jesus reveals himself through those miracles on the mountaintop. Now, let's face it, a mountaintop is not easy to get to. Can you imagine the blind man or the crippled person trying to make their way up the mountaintop just to be with Jesus? The key is this: they paid the price. And that's what it took to see the supernatural power of God released. My question to you today is, how many of you are willing to do the same? Pay that price to dwell on the mountaintop and see the power of God released. You know, Jesus was the Son of God. He was one with God. But we see in these verses that every time he revealed himself on a mountaintop, it brought a new dimension of the kingdom of God through his life. And we can fully expect him to do the same for us in us and through us when we are invested in getting to the mountaintop. So this is your action point for this week. Write down what you're going to do differently this year in order to ensure that you meet with Jesus on the mountaintop. And on that note, let me encourage you to share with me what he shows you in the commentaries. And don't forget to like this channel if these things are speaking to your heart. I'll see you next week.